Welcome to our Global Public Health Challenges and Opportunities Insight from the Experts series. This is a 4-part series happening the same time next week, and we've really valued your participation throughout. And today we're really lucky to have Professor Priscilla Harries present their talk on striving for research excellence, approaches to supporting research innovation and research capacity development. Professor Harries is Associate Dean of Research and Director of the Center for Applied Health and Social Care Research at the Faculty of Health, Social Care and Education at St. George's University of London and Kingston University. She is Honorary Professor of Occupational Therapy in the Department of Life Sciences at Brunel University London, a NIHR panel member, Fellow of the Royal College of Occupational Therapists, and an appointed member of the REF 2021 subpanel for allied health professions, dentistry, nursing, and pharmacy. So welcome, Professor Harries. We're so excited to have your talk today, and I look forward to seeing you at the end for the discussion.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation to speak to you today. I'm going to speak on the topic of striving for research excellence, approaches to supporting research innovation and research capacity development. I'll be addressing these approaches quite broadly, but as this is a Global Health Challenges lecture series, I'm going to draw on some examples relevant to global public health, such as maternal health in Uganda, asthma management in Latin America, and inclusive education in Pakistan, as well as tobacco use in India. For those less familiar with global public health, as I know this is a public health series and not everybody on the call will be a health researcher, public health focuses at the community or population level. It's not about the individual, and it really seeks to find global approaches to protecting health. So it could be through vaccination programs, which we're all really acutely aware of at the moment and the impact of those. But it can also be about promoting health through tackling any of the determinants of health, such as behaviour, the environment, physical influences, our genetics, as well as the medical and social care and social factors that impact on our health. So the UK is one of the world leaders in terms of investment in global public health, and through our funders, we have very strong income streams. So for example, the Wellcome Trust, the National Institute for Health Research, the NIHR, the Medical Research Council, and special funding streams like the Global Challenges Research Fund. These really make sure that we're very effective in these fields of research. The types of funding streams support our UK researchers to tackle these global health challenges, as well as supporting us to collaborate with countries in the low and middle economic development groups, or migrants from these countries, perhaps in the higher income groups, to help strengthen health systems in their areas. So I'm just going to have to give you a couple of disclaimers here. One is I'm Deputy Theme Lead for the Applied Research Collaboration in South London on the Research Capacities Development theme. And I just have to ensure you're aware that the views I present in this talk are those my own views and not necessarily those of the NIHR or the Department of Health. And also I've just put on the bottom there as well, as a government appointed REF subpanel member, I'm also only going to discuss what's in the public domain, obviously because REF subpanel member discussions are confidential. For the members of the public, to explain what the REF is, this is where the government assesses the quality of research undertaken by UK universities, and it's designed to drive excellence in research, but also it's the funding mechanism which awards all the funding to universities through the quality research income, which is around 1.6 billion from the last REF round, so very significant income. So I'm part of the panel which does that assessment process, and that is then related to how income is awarded to universities. So just moving on now, I'd like to dedicate my lecture. I'd like to dedicate the lecture to Dr. Jess Singh. Jess was a wonderful Nepalese researcher who worked with us in clinical sciences, and I know some of the colleagues on the call know her very well, but very sadly her life was cut short. So I wanted to dedicate this lecture to you, Jess. So it's really important that we first remind ourselves why we do research. We all know why we teach our students to help them graduate into the workforce, but why do we do research, especially in universities? So I think it's really important because research benefits society very widely. It helps us be innovative, know how to do things better, so we know how we can improve people's lives and drive prosperity. Here's the McKinsey Global Institute 2020 report calculating the cost benefits of improving health. Many of us in health, from health professions, are not so driven by the cost benefits, but more the benefits to people and communities. But let's face it, that is a massive factor and also supports the funding streams going forward for our research areas. So there are these immense social benefits, but there's also great economic benefits. And we know from our research that we can improve the effectiveness of our healthcare workforces, of our services we offer, and we need that research evidence to make sure we're undertaking those approaches in the most effective way possible. So we need to all the time try to become more research intensive, improve the quality of our research, increase the quantity of that research, and also increase our research capability. So we're continually looking to improve what we do. I really like the image on this particular McKinsey report, because one of the key people who supported me with my research when I was at Brunel was Professor Christina Victor, who's the Vice Dean of Research for Clinical Sciences. And as those of you who know her, she's a national level swimmer. So this one's for you, Christina. I don't know quite how you've been surviving without being allowed to do your swimming during lockdown, because you always swam every day. So thinking of you, and I'm sure you're looking forward to the swimming pools reopening again. So as we look to improve, we need to think about how it is that we can improve our research capability and our research excellence. We need these approaches and processes to help drive us forward. Now, global public health is a very big topic, and I just thought it was important, first of all, to think about what does it actually cover. So you can see here that the United Nations in 2015 has 17 sustainable development goals. Now, these really drive forward global sustainable development worldwide. So I want, just as you're perhaps thinking, oh, I'll just look at my phone or put my feet up or multitask, I'm going to ask you to concentrate very hard for a few minutes. And I'm going to show you a little clip with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And I want you to try and spot how many of these you think relate to health. Okay, so it might be you want to put your answer in the chat box. I won't be able to see it while I'm presenting, but how many of the 17 relate to health? So concentrate hard, it's pretty fast. So how many did you get? There's actually 11 which relate to health out of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which just shows what a huge bearing the health of our world's population has on our sustainable world. So, okay, so I'm now going to move on to the areas I'm outlining in my research presentation. So we're focusing on striving for research excellence. What approaches can we have for supporting research innovation and research capacity development? So how do the high-performing research centres achieve research excellence? How can we nurture the talent of the future? What can we learn from meta-research centres like Wellcome Trust Research on Research Institute? And what strategic approaches, as well as pragmatic steps, are needed to enhance our research capacity and capability? So I've grouped our approaches to these questions in terms of how we can answer them into 3 areas. Firstly, policy drivers and funding in our collaborative communities, and thirdly, career development and research cultures. So I'm going to start with policy drivers and funding. So, of course, in the world of universities, we can't not consider the REF, the Research Excellence Framework, which I outlined earlier. So I'm just going to check my notes here. Yeah. So obviously right now, all the universities are very heavily engaged in the submission for 2021. That has to be submitted the end of the month in March, and that will collate all the research publications from those staff with significant research responsibility, representing them, and the impact case studies which demonstrate the impact which our research has both socially and economically, and also our environment statements, which describe the research environments universities create to support excellent research. And this is, as I said, last time round, brought in 1.6 billion through the awards to universities in the UK and drives forward our research. So it rewards quality. So quite soon after the last REF, which was undertaken in 2014, commissioned a report to identify the characteristics of high-performing research units. And we can look at this document to learn about what really created environments where submissions to the REF panel were successful. What can we learn from these? So the key factors which they identified in this report were that the universities which were very successful employed PhD educated staff as a minimum, with international experience, if possible, who were attracting externally funded research income towards their salaries. We all do our best to do that, but it's a very competitive environment, so we aren't always successful. The staffing strategies of these centres focused on recruiting and retaining high quality staff, and also interestingly provided very strong performance rewards or incentives to perform well. So they not only tried to recruit those strong research profiles, but they also tried to really focus on supporting the rising stars for the future. These centres had very strong, well-respected leadership, and they encouraged researchers to initiate collaborations organically, as opposed to using a top-down approach. They had mentorship programs, and they saw those as crucial to generating new ideas. Had staff training, including training on writing grant applications. Now, that was across all the different disciplines, whether it was engineering, computer science, the arts, for example. But there's another document there, the Council of Deans for Health took on an additional review, and they really focused in on nursing, midwifery and allied health professions, which is known as Unit of Assessment 3 as part of the REF. So thank you to Patrick Callahan and colleagues at the Council of Deans who followed up this original HEFCE review with their own investigation, and they looked at Unit of Assessment 3 specifically. They only actually found 5 UK universities that met a 3 to 4 star 100% rating. 3 and 4 star is international and world leading research being undertaken. So there were only 5 universities in the UK which were strong in nursing, allied health and midwifery, according to their review. So they had a look to see what additional factors did the area of Unit of Assessment 3 bring out as being needed to create these 5 top centres. So firstly was we need to have a good volume and seniority in the clinical academics employed in the university. Secondly, needed to be scholarships to support clinicians to be able to undertake fellowships with universities, and also bridging funding in place to support them to apply for awards. There needs to be more extension and fostering of partnerships nationally and internationally, and more mentoring to support future leaders, as well as seed funding for sabbaticals and writing retreats. Peer review had to be used effectively, and also they really pointed out a very important area, which is the lack of diversity in our clinical academic workforce. Without that, we do miss out on the breadth of our real talent And there are a number of areas which we'll touch on during the talk, which demonstrate how we're trying to increase the diversity of our workforce within research for clinical academics. So just having a quick look at what the REF changes have been, I might whip through a few of these quite quickly. So in Unit of Assessment 3 in 2014, they divided out nursing and allied health and those different areas if universities wanted to. This time they've kept them together, and that is important because we'll be able to make sure that investment in these areas is quite broad spread and therefore helps to generate better research. Also, open access was mandated, so all of us have to make sure our research papers are open to the public, either through the university repositories or through paying for open access journals. Research impact had a big increase, up to another 5%, so this is worth a huge amount of the REF income now. So this really drives us to do research which is impactful, which is so important. It also changed the structure. So in 2014, you had to have 4 papers and then you were submitted. This time around, you have to have significant research responsibility. And if you have this, you are submitted. People have to have a minimum of 1 paper up to a maximum of 5. So it has become much more inclusive, and those members of academic staff who spend less time on research and quite a lot of time on teaching, they can have a goal now in the next sort of 6-7 years to try and have 1 3-star, good quality, internationally valuable research study published. And that would be really adding the contribution to our areas of research. And those who are very heavily involved in research can have up to a maximum of 5 submitted. So these are the ratings, as I mentioned, and last time around, the world leading research areas with 4-star ratings, that was quite a heavy multiplier compared to the 3-star in terms of income given. So again, it's really pushing us to raise our standards and go for that world leading research. Okay, so now moving on to another area, I'd like to just focus on the Wellcome Trust and the work done by Rory. Now, Rory is, Wellcome is one of the founding partners of Rory. Rory stands for Research on Research Institute. And Research on Research, otherwise called Science of Science or meta-research, it needs to be better joined up. It really helps us to understand how we're investing in the right types of research, for example. It's not the research we're actually doing, they're looking at the big picture. So for example, what are the areas where we're getting really excellent publications in good volume of good quality? And how is the investment in these research areas impacting on that? So for example, you can see in this diagram here, they looked at all the areas of research undertaken, and this was published in 2019. I'm sure infectious diseases will have grown rapidly since then. And the colour and size of the bubbles give you an indication of how strong the research area is in that field in terms of volume and how much is in PubMed, which is an open access journal of good quality platform. So they were then also able to look at each area. So for example, in mental health, these are the areas of mental health where there's very large volumes of research. So alcohol, schizophrenia and autism. So I do recommend these documents to you to help you understand some of the kind of meta policy aspects which are influencing our research. They have also produced some documents on the role of funders in responsible research assessment. It's very interesting being linked to a Wellcome Trust grant at the moment because they're very keen to work with us on shaping the research undertaken. Also, they've provided another paper on how to support our doctoral students going forward. So in terms of the grants which we got funded, there were 4 projects funded by the Research on Research Institute, and this was one of them. So we have a project called TOR, and TOR is linked to outstanding research reviews. So I'm one of the co-principal investigators with my colleagues Tushna and Gail at University, and our grant is focused on how peer reviewers use and combine information when they're making recommendations for grants to be funded. And we're examining the Wellcome Trust grant peer reviewers' decision making, and we're focusing in now on their fellowship applications. So also another area where the Wellcome Trust is has some developments which are important to be aware of, particularly because they are focused on global health challenges as one of their areas of priority, are their doctoral training partnerships. Now, they have to date funded a third of medical doctors' PhDs, but the previous model didn't allow anyone apart from doctors to apply for these health professionals fellowship awards. But with some lobbying and also the foresight of the Wellcome Trust, which is a very, very innovative funder, this has now changed, and the funding awards are now open to all registered healthcare professionals. So very good luck to any teams who are applying. You have to apply as a collaboration for these types of awards, and the closing date is today. So very good luck to them, and we look forward to seeing the announcements, especially if there's any link to global health, because all healthcare professionals will then be able to apply to universities hosting these award schemes. So let's go back to our three areas. So we've covered policies and funding in a few different ways. Let's look at collaborative communities. Here I've used the sculpture in the Brunel University London grounds on the campus. I remember this being designed and winning the Design Student Award. So it's called the Connect sculpture. And when the hands touch, I think it lights up in some way. I'll have to come back and visit and remind myself. So what ways do we have our collaborative communities to support us? Because these are an absolute key driver in helping us to do excellent research. Well, the applied research collaborations, otherwise known as the ARCs, which were previously called the Clarks, all of us used to struggle to spell that, so I'm very pleased they're called the ARCs now, are 15 centres in England. Each were able to bid for up to £9 million for a 5-year funding award. And these ARCs have key roles in relation to driving forward quality research, ensuring excellent collaboration and research development capacity building. So the South London ARC, which I'm part of, is headed up by Professor Graham Thornycroft, and it has a number of themes. One of them is public and patient involvement, which is a very, very key theme. We always need to be working very closely to co-design and co-conduct our research as much as possible with those who the research is for. So there's a term, nothing about us, without us, which is really sums up the fact that where we're doing research, it is always for communities and patients and the public. And so they are key partners in our research collaborations. So Mary Chambers, my colleague at the Joint Faculty at Houston and St George's, heads up the public and patient engagement team. And Rachel Allen, Professor Rachel Allen, heads up the research capacity development team. So next year I'm going to be working to support Rachel with that theme as one of her deputies, and we're looking to develop a network with South London for NIHR researchers to support them by providing mentorship and networking opportunities to develop their research careers. So all the ARCs in in England do have a remit to support research capacity development. So do look at your geographical area and see what they're offering near you. And one other area of our particular ARC is implementation science, and that is a very valuable way where we actually support our research to get into practice. So again, I know the Northwest London ARC, which is linked to Brunel, is certainly they've previously developed some very valuable e-modules in implementation science. And in South London, Professor Nick Savdalis is leading our area. So all of those are really valuable ARCs to follow in terms of their newsletters or their Twitter accounts, etc. Another area NIHR is supporting is through the Incubators. These are relatively new, you might not have come across them yet. But the NIHR took a strategic review of training, looking at back 10 years, and they really felt they needed to do more to support research in particular areas where the critical mass is still quite low. So they identified all these particular areas, as you can see. One of them is public health. And if you look up these through the NIHR Academy, you'll see the type of support being offered. And one aspect is that researchers are going to be offered postdoctoral mentorship as part of these incubators, as well as providing collaborative networks for people interested in research in these fields. So do look into that. Another type of NIHR award is the Global Health Research Groups or units. The group programs fund research to address locally identified challenges in low and middle income countries, and they make sure that these partnerships to undertake these research are equitable and really support research capacity development in those countries. So they award up to £3 million grants over a period of 3 to 4 years. And here, for example, you can see one awarded to Professor Philip Cooper, one of our colleagues at St George's, and he has a £2 million grant to support research on asthma in Latin America. So I thought you might like to hear from a researcher in the field. This is Kirsty Lador. She's a professor of vaccinology and immunology currently in Uganda, and she works at St George's in our Infection and Immunity Research Institute. And she's a UKRI Future Leaders Fellow. So I'm just going to attempt to play her clip, which she sent me from Uganda last night.
My name's Kirsty Ladwari. I'm a professor of vaccinology and immunology, currently working in Uganda, and Priscilla Harries has asked me to speak very briefly about my top tips of ways to build research capacity in global public health. I think the easiest way to build research capacity is to employ people locally that have the skills and talent to do the job that you need them to do, and then to work with them in the same way as you would work with fellows in the UK to ensure that the training and expertise that they need is provided both by the UK institution and the partner institution, in my case, Uganda. What I'm trying to do with fellows that work on my projects is to pair expertise and share examples of good practice in Uganda between fellows coming from the UK and fellows based here in Uganda, as there's such a wealth of expertise in both settings that fellows are able to learn upon, and making a faculty of early career researchers is really helpful to trying to improve research capacity throughout the sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, so now coming back from Uganda, where Kirsty is, to closer to home, to our colleagues at Brunel, and Nana heads up our Brunel Global Public Health Academy. This is another example of an excellent collaborative group and offers excellent programs in public health. And so, for example, if you look at some of the projects undertaken through this area, we have, for example, Christina Victor's project on engagement of diverse groups in culture and sport. And also Professor Subhash Doctoral has a research funded project on tobacco use in India. So Subhash kindly, at my request, has invited his research colleague, Dr Rashmini Mehar, to tell us about her views on her topic. Rashmi is working on tobacco use, and he's a dentist and a researcher. And in India, often people use tobacco in their mouth through chewing it. So he has a very relevant background. And she's evaluating the impact of the World Health Organization framework. This is the framework for the Convention on Tobacco Use Control. She's going to give us a brief talk in a clip, and she refers to the FCTC. So this is the Framework Convention on Tobacco Use and Control.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rashmi Mehra. I'm a public health professional and researcher. I did my dentistry and my MDS in dental public health from Delhi, Maulana Azad Institute of Dental Sciences, and then went on to do MSc in public health and health promotion from Brunel University London. At present, I am working as a research assistant for a WHO funded project to assess the effect and impact of the FCTC 2030, which was a project undertaken to improve the implementation of the FCTC articles in 15 countries. After my university being back in India, it suddenly opened my eyes to the plethora of problems faced by young researchers like me in the real bad world. I realized how much there is a need for research capacity strengthening in a country like India and in other countries which belong to the lower middle income country bracket. This is especially the case since there is so much potential, so much data generation, which is going unutilized in countries like India. I feel like a lot can be done in terms of research capacity strengthening, especially in the LMICs. I think that collaborative research projects are probably should be the top priority in terms of support to young researchers like us, because there is a need for opportunities. And by opportunities, I don't necessarily restrict myself to opportunities that bring back monetary gains to researchers. No. By opportunities, I include and I would surpass opportunities of networking with fellow peers and, of course, many senior colleagues and researchers. By opportunities, I mean opportunity to be interning in organizations which are involved in health research and opportunities for shadowing eminent researchers in certain fields of research. By opportunities, I also would like to, of course, emphasize that there is a sheer lack of prospects in terms of working in a research project which is funded by either a national or an international level organization. So once these opportunities can be brought about on the horizon of public health research, I feel that would really give an impetus to young researchers to go on to improve the general health research capacity of a country, and especially in the LMICs.
Thank you, Rashmini. So helpful to hear perspectives from those doing the research in the field. So moving on with our theme of collaborative communities and how these support us to do research. As an allied health professional and occupational therapist, I thought it was important to represent us as well. And so we do have a number of organisations. For example, physiotherapy has an organisation called ADAPT, and the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy has a number of funding awards which can be used to support CSP members for development projects. In occupational therapy, we have OT Frontiers, and we have, for example, guidance from 4 different allied health professionals on how to support work when working in global health. Here are some examples of our research in this field. So, for example, Mariel Norris, one of the physiotherapists in clinical sciences here, did research on the impact of stroke in Indonesia. We also have in the centre here Dr. Jenny Jones, just in the back left. You might be able to spot her here. And Jenny is a physio at Brunel, and she's funded by the World Heart Foundation, to collaborate on treatment for cardiovascular disease. And she's currently working with Mozambique and Fiji. And in terms of occupational therapy, picture down in the bottom right, you'll see Ty Frater and Debbie Kramer-Roy. And Debbie led a project in Pakistan, together with her colleagues there, her occupational therapy colleagues, to support children with disabilities to become part of the mainstream classroom education system, otherwise known as inclusive education. So I have a brief clip here from Debbie, which I'd like to play for you.
While I worked at Brunel University, I led a 3-year action research project developing the role of occupational therapy in inclusive education there. And this was kind of based on my experience of living in Pakistan for 9 years, where I worked as an occupational therapist, community-based rehabilitation worker, but also teaching on inclusive education to teachers. We've chosen action research because that is a collaborative approach where partners from the UK, from Brunel University, and from the Pakistani university where the OT college was based, work together with a local primary school which was willing to work with us to develop inclusive education. Action research is a very hands-on approach with an emergent design. So you start from a certain situation, and together through cycles of action, reflection and planning, you develop strategies that are useful in the local context. It really develops critical thinking, reflective practice, and it gives a lot of ownership to the local colleagues who are carrying out the actual day-to-day parts of the project. So in this way, the research did not only facilitate the research capacity within the occupational therapy and teacher colleagues, but also their general professional development. And they gained a lot of confidence also because they came and visited Europe to present at conferences, and they very confidently told colleagues here about what we had developed and why. So this was really fantastic. So the international travel also exposed them to inclusive education in other countries in the world, and they realized that it is not something that needs necessarily a lot of materials or money, but rather a different approach to teaching and occupational therapy within the schools. What you do need to be aware of is that when you bring people to Europe, that you don't show it as like a gold standard, because it certainly isn't still yet within inclusive education. But also visas and travel can be very frustrating. And for example, once we had to resort to presenting on Skype, which was in 2016 not very common yet, unlike now. And my Pakistani colleagues did a wonderful job communicating with the audience in Ireland from Pakistan. So this is just a little glimpse of what we've done and how action research really fits with occupational therapy approaches and really enabled the co-researchers in Pakistan to develop wonderful things, including a resource guide, which is freely available for teachers and therapists online. So if you're interested in that, do contact me. Thank you.
So we're now on to our last theme, career development and research structures. I'd just like to take 5 minutes just to give you some points on this. So a key gold standard funder for us in our health professions is the clinical academic program offered by the NIHR, and these are at all different levels, from pre-doctoral awards right through to professorial level. I'm currently a deputy chair of the doctoral panel, and what I see coming through is outstanding talent with really excellent projects and superb teams. And as a funder, NIHR did expand out from just medicine and dentistry to support allied health and nursing as well. But for these professions which I'm supporting, it is quite clear to me that we don't have a lack of talent in our pipeline. We're overwhelmed by talent. It is really the funding we need to keep growing to support people, because each year we have more applications which we would like to fund and are fundable, deemed fundable, but insufficient awards are made. So even if we could have 10 more funded doctoral fellows a year, that could lead to an additional 10 professors in our nursing, midwifery and allied health professions coming to fruition each year. So in the equivalent terms in medicine, the ACS, there's 250 places funded, and these are 3 years of supernumerary posts, including 9 months of time to develop a project or work up a PhD application. So there's no comparison with the investment in the funding. But with the size of the workforce for nursing, midwifery and allied health, it is so important that we do really support this research capacity development. So my recommendation on this point is please do keep applying to be on funding panels and on policy advisory boards, because it's very important that we can influence the diversity needed to really produce excellent research across all of our fields. I'm currently on the HTA NIHR award panel. This is the one that funds the large clinical trials. And I can propose PICOs, which are research brief proposals, So if you do have any you would like me to put forward and present on your behalf, please do send them through. The NIHR also has a mentorship scheme to support colleagues in these on these awards. So, for example, you can see here listed a number of fellows, a number of professorial colleagues from across the health and social care professionals, which are offering this mentorship to fellowship award holders. Very important. So I think another element is the broader NIHR Career Development Academy. So you can see the ARC there listed at the top, which I previously mentioned, but there's also these additional structures, including the School for Public Health Research. Very importantly too, are our clinical colleagues and social care practitioners. So they are absolutely key in supporting research engagement. And this paper, undertaken by Professor Annette Puas, who is my colleague at the Joint Faculty, Kingston and St George's, as together with Steve Hanney, who's in the Clinical Sciences Department at Brunel with Teresa Jones, they demonstrated through this BMJ paper that when clinicians engage in research, there is an improvement in the healthcare outcomes for the patients of that hospital. So this is a really important area we must continue to build on. And I know as part of the development at St George's Hospital and Trust, we are certainly using papers like this to drive forward our collaborations with our clinical colleagues to ensure greater research capacity development. Another key document which is driving forward research capacity development is the CORD Act. This is the framework published in 2019 under the leadership of Professor Julia Buckingham, President and VC of Brunel University. And this has many key elements which we need to take forward into our areas of work. Many universities have signed up and have their action plans in place. So, for example, at Kingston University, I've just supported the introduction of open contracts to move researchers onto these. And thank you to colleagues at Brunel who provided me with some of that information to help us take that forward. So we're now moving our researchers onto open contracts, which are much better for their career development, allowing them the opportunity to apply for grants in their own right as they count as permanent contracts. We also have the opportunity to give much more education to researchers, a minimum of 10 days pro rata. And we have, like the Council of Deans Research Month opportunity at the top there, you'll see, which has an excellent blog demonstrating all kinds of ways you can implement improvements in research culture, particularly building on the research cultures review undertaken by the Wellcome Trust. There's also 3 more types of awards universities can apply for and hospitals. So these also include opportunities to advance the diversity and support for our workforce. Just at a local level, I developed the Research Leadership Academy. We had a very successful year and we've evaluated that. One of the key elements that came out was the value of the mentorship offered. So this is again a very important element we must grow in our infrastructures to support capacity development. We plan to visit the Centres of Research Excellence identified in the REF and to have some actual workshops, but because of COVID those couldn't happen. But we did have a lecture programme and here on a whole range of topics, including how to influence government policy and how to make impact, as well as grant writing workshops and listening to autobiographical journeys of successful leaders. So I think the final slide I just want to show you is how some of the funders are developing their diversity and how their opportunities are arising for careers in research. So Cancer Research UK have introduced a more flexible research career funding policy, and they have a competency framework which now recognises things like leadership and teamwork, as well as just publications and funding track record, to try and really support that full range of capacity for those opportunities we are supporting. So in coming back to those questions, these are the types of 3 approaches which can help us to strive to become excellent research centres, to support us to develop our research capacity and capability. And really we can learn from the Wellcome Trust Research and Research Institute and therefore nurture the talent of our future. I have one more clip from Dr. Susie Lance, PhD student under Professor Tom Solomon at Liverpool University, and a doctor at St George's, and currently on placement at, on one of her positions at Royal Marsden. So Susie also talked about her experience of working in Brazil and on international projects to do with the Zika virus.
Hi, I'm Susie Lant. I'm a doctor in the UK and a clinical research fellow with the University of Liverpool's Brain Infections Group. And for the last few years, I was based in Brazil, working on a study looking at whether Zika virus can cause infections of the nervous system. And I was working with an organisation called Fiocruz, a public health research organisation, in a study funded by the EU called Zika Plan. And my experience of doing good research in Brazil, which is a upper middle income country, is that you really need local expertise, early policymaker engagement, and then lots of training to enable sustainable research capacity building. And so I've seen myself moving from the Zika situation into the COVID pandemic. Many of the networks that were built up during the Zika pandemic in Brazil, for example, links forged between local hospitals and Fiocruz, the research centre, and its laboratories, have been so important in providing a rapid research response to the COVID pandemic in Brazil. Additionally, we did training of local healthcare professionals and researchers, and those people were able to then move into working on different clinical studies in the COVID pandemic from the Zika studies that we've been working on. And in addition to that kind of training in person locally, platforms such as the Global Health Network are incredibly useful, I think, and I would really recommend that as a resource, because they have global knowledge sharing hubs. We set up a site called Brain Infections Global, and that has lots of resources, both with information on specific to brain infections, but also on research training more generally. And things like the Global Health Network provide lots of free protocols, things like approaches to applying to ethics and study materials, which are translated into different languages, which is key. So those things, training local people and providing free resources online, I think are things where a lot of impact has been made in this COVID situation to responding to this pandemic.
So thank you for listening to these ways, which I've proposed, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Harries. That was really interesting, really important, and really helpful. And we've gotten many notes of thanks from members of the audience. So the first question is, how could we strengthen developing a research system in universities in low and middle income countries? In most countries, we find it is individual academic led with less institutional support to have a research infrastructure.
Well, I suppose in the UK, a lot of our funding platforms encourage collaboration and breadth of opportunities. So, for example, that doctoral training partnership from the Wellcome Trust, it's looking for collaborations to come together to offer that whole infrastructure, and that provides then the opportunity for cohorts of researchers to come together on themes. So I think funders in those countries, or where we're perhaps supporting funding from the UK, perhaps through, say, the Global Challenges Research Funding, really does need to look at collaboration and the environment as much as possible to promote that opportunity. I think mentorship is key. Now, if you only have one senior person with many, many researchers underneath them, it's quite hard for them to do mentorship. So I think we do know that that has such a great benefit. There is a trend for inverse mentorship or reverse mentorship, where those young people who, well, they might not be young, but fairly new to their professions or research careers, can offer mentorship to more senior leaders. So perhaps that might be a model which could be introduced. I know, for example, the head of BP has an excellent reverse mentor, and it's about understanding what really supports that future leadership, because let's face it, some of us will be finishing our careers in the next 10, 20 years, and we really need the future talent to come through. So I guess those are my two recommendations.
Thank you. So the next question is really interesting. They're saying, I'm not connected with the health field. As a member of the general public, I'm stuck in this very interesting lecture by the extent of international collaboration work in developing LMICs. Is enough done to explain in accessible and practical language the research projects going on and their benefits and relevance to the wider public, taxpayers, and supporters?
Okay. The acronym you gave, the LLICs, was it?
Yeah, so in developing low and middle income countries, yeah. So what's done over there? How are we explaining it to the public?
Yes, okay. Well, I think universities obviously are one of the hubs undertaking research in the UK, and we've had the REF, which supports us and drives us forward, and the funding really gives us a good target to go for. But of course, we do the research for the benefits of the people we're supporting. Now, more recently, the government's introduced the KEF, the Knowledge Exchange Framework. And the Knowledge Exchange Framework is all about how we engage the public and people and communities in our research, and how we support knowledge exchange and transition to make a difference in our communities. So that is actually the mechanism in universities which will really help us to focus our strategies around engaging in research. Now, Brunel has a public lecture series. That's one opportunity. And we had very large groups of public and patient involvement for many, many years. So, for example, in social work, which initially drove the opportunities for collaboration on research projects with public and patient engagement members, that's probably been going for at least 30 years, I should think, at Brunel. And more recently, other fields of research are expecting to see those people who the research would matter to being involved in designing the research. So I know at Brunel they have an excellent PPI group for engagement in older adult research. So I think about 150 people were in that group, and we could share with them topic ideas or them with us, and that would help us come together and design projects. So do look out for those opportunities to get more involved.
Okay, great. And another question on low and middle income countries and health systems in particular. So this question is saying that they're more interested to know or hear from you how to strengthen the primary health systems in those countries from the perspective of research or research culture.
Yes, I think what we have to be so careful not to do is to presume every low or middle income country might have need similar approaches. I think every area, every community, every population can be very different, and the way governments work and the systems which might help one country might not help another country. So really working together with colleagues in those countries is probably the most beneficial way. And obviously, we have to support the research capacity development of the researchers in those countries to really take that forward. Now, there's one more video clip which we didn't play today from Susie. And I know when I had a conversation with her, she's done some research in Brazil. And I know that the infrastructures there and the systems she had to deal with were very, very different from when she's done research in other low or middle income countries. So I think talking and collaborating with researchers in those countries and the policy makers and the leaders in those countries are fundamental to designing the research project or to approaching the ways to build the capacity there. Just like in the first slide I showed, where I talked about how we really need to develop high-performing research centres in the UK and universities. They need to be organic and bottom-up. There might be an element of top-down because of funding, but obviously we need to go to those people and work with them about what will work for them.
Thank you. So turning away to kind of more of the end of your talk, the question is, it's really interesting that you spoke about high-quality research involving recruitment of PhDs. How do we extend this further to include those from underrepresented groups who may not have access to PhD programs, but are of equally high caliber?
So I'm just thinking about the last part about they might not have access to PhD programs. I wonder what that's about. So, so certainly at Kingston University, one of my I work across the joint faculty in 2 universities. Kingston University has a very strong reputation for supporting diversity through its education programs, and through the PhD fellowships, which we were able to award last year, we did particularly welcome applications from Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups, or any group which would be underrepresented within the research field. So, and that was very successful, and we were able to recruit applicants from more diverse areas. And I think the particular funding streams which are being advertised for doctoral training partnerships, they are very competitive, but they certainly do have that as a key element. All of our universities strive to have the appropriate research environment, and those are recognised through awards such as the Athena Swan Award, which originally was to support women in science, but now is much broader in its approach. But also the Concordat, for example, or the HR in Excellence, Research Excellence Awards, they really drive forward universities to ensure those are in place. So I think the other factors are, we do recognise that there are background reasons why people might not have had the opportunities that other people might not have had, or they would have perhaps come up against some discrimination. And therefore, when we're assessing people for these types of awards, if they're coming from underrepresented groups, we have to take that into account. In the same way that nowadays it's very standard that if that Wellcome Trust PhD application, there's a box there, have you had time out? I had 3 maternity leaves and I went part-time for 8 years to raise my boys. So we're quite good on managing that, but we've got to get much better at representing all underrepresented groups.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. So picking up on the various important points you made about the NIHR and issues in LMIC, how far do you think the comprehensive approach towards health research strategies in NIHR provides an approach that could be useful in NIHR to encourage capacity building, collaboration, etc.?
Could you just repeat the beginning?
Sure, and this is from Professor Hanny, so one of our other panelists from the event. So yeah, we're lucky to have some participation from him. So picking up on various important points you made about the NIHR and issues in low and middle income countries, how far do you think the comprehensive approach towards health research strategies in NIHR provides an approach that could be useful in NIHR to encourage capacity building, collaboration, etc.?
Yeah, certainly those global, the funding award I mentioned, for example, to St. George's to do with asthma in South America, part of the application process is that in order to be successful in getting those awards, you have to demonstrate that you will be doing this research in partnership in an equitable way. So I think in order to support equality and collaboration, like Debbie Kramer-Roy talked about as well, where she used, for example, methods like action research to support people to with their own research rather than doing research on them. I think it's the approaches we have to take and the criteria within our funding panel awards, like the NIHR, that we need to really demonstrate that we're supporting research capacity development, supporting equality, and really working with people to support the priority topics that they want to focus on. So probably Steve would be able to answer it better than me.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Harries. It's, again, so interesting, so important, so helpful, and we've gotten many messages for that. For the audience, please tune in next week. We have Professor William Matan-Haworth discussing his talk on communicable disease control, development of a national web-based system. So thank you again, and you'll be able to see this talk on Brunel YouTube.